Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Donovan and Dino on this Monday afternoon as we gather following the Browns' 16-6 loss to the Raiders on Sunday as the team moves now to their bye week. Along with the voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan, I'm Dave DeNatale. And Jimmy, it was almost like the Browns started their bye week one day too early. Just kind of looked like they were physically dominated and mentally fried when they played yesterday. And you can't do that against anybody, especially against a team like the Raiders that feels like they have a shot to be a playoff team. And it really did come back to haunt the Browns.
Yeah, it really did. It was a totally frustrating day. I mean, you take a look at the game, and you really knew pretty early in the morning that the conditions weather-wise were going to be very, very difficult. But you have to deal with that. Both teams had to deal with that. But in the game, the way it played out, it was just really frustrating. Tough day all the way around for the Browns. They couldn't get off the field defensively, and they couldn't get on the field offensively because the defense couldn't get off the field. So I give the Raiders a lot of credit. They came into town under real tough conditions, and also with a restructured offensive line that had lost their big right tackle, Trent Brown, to a medical situation, almost an emergency before the game. And he ended up hospitalized when they thought he was finally going to be able to play for them. But I thought they made a great adjustment, Dino, early in the game. And I think that they win the chess match for being able to come in with a game plan and then realize that the conditions aren't going to allow them to implement that game plan. And they changed. And I know exactly when they did it. It was pretty early in the first half, and they threw a pass to Henry Ruggs, their rookie wide receiver, a real speedster out of the University of Alabama. He was 10 yards clear of anybody in the Browns defense, but Derek Carr overthrew him because the wind and the adjustments he had to make. And I think John Gruden and Carr said to each other, hey, listen, you're not going to be able to throw the ball long. You have no kind of gauge and no capacity to control the ball in flight because the wind is so severe. So we're going to shorten the passing game and think that that's going to open up our running game, and that's exactly what happened, and it played that way out in the second half. Thus, you had these eight in the second half that eventually lead away from the Browns, and thus you're losing 16-6.
Yeah, it really was a game of keep away, and you got the feeling when the Raiders had that long drive in the third quarter, Jimmy, I'm sitting there going, this is going to be really tough for the Browns to win today because, they're just not able to get the football. And even if you get it and you score, it's going to take you a while to score anyway. It's just the time of possession. It feels like it's been a while for that to really come back and hurt the Browns. But you just, in that chess match that you talk about, the Browns just never had the numbers go their way, so to speak.
No, they really didn't. And, I was driving down to the game yesterday morning, and I think that we were all so euphoric about what had happened the week before in Cincinnati. And even to the point that we kind of, took the Odell Beckham Jr. injury and the subsequent diagnosis that he had an ACL tear and he wouldn't be back for the rest of the year. And we kind of glibly put that to the side with a lot of talk show topic about, hey, maybe they're a better team without OBJ. But as I was driving down to the game yesterday, it really hit me with the reality of the Browns' offensive situation going into the game. So you weren't going to have Odell Beckham Jr., and you're not going to have him for the rest of the season. You didn't have Nick Chubb going into the game. You didn't have Austin Hooper in the game. And you didn't have a guy that had performed as your best offensive lineman, Wyatt Teller, at right guard. You didn't have him. That's a lot to be missing in an offense, whether you're playing the Raiders or any other team or the Jets. That's going to be a lot to be missing, and that's going to be tough to overcome that. And as the game played out, that really was a big part of when they were on the field offensively, why they struggled. They got beaten up on the offensive line, and they really haven't been the same on that offensive line since Teller went out with his calf injury. Yesterday was a day that was made for Nick Chubb. A day where you have to grind the game out and you have to be able to get the tough yardage. And in lieu of putting the ball up into the teeth of that wind. And the other factor is that I think that, you needed to go to a shorter passing game. What I said the Raiders really did do in the game. And Beckham is a guy that would give you that quick slant over the middle and give you the yards after catch. And I think Hooper's the same kind of guy, a tight end guy that can give you that little rolling play where he can get in front of a linebacker or a defensive back and just body his way and catch the ball. So I think realistically, if we just took a step back and dealt with reality, the Browns were really undermanned offensively going into the game. And then week in and week out, they're undermanned defensively anyway, and that's going to be the way that it's going to go for the rest of the year, unless they do something diabolical tomorrow before the trade deadline. And I don't know if that move is there for them. But then you throw in that Myles Garrett only played about 50% of the game because it turns out that he had a bad ankle, but he had a worse condition. His knee was bothering him. So I think that, going into the game, that all of that and then the Garrett injury became a real problem for them.
Now, the good news about the Garrett injury is that Kevin Stefanski said earlier today that there's nothing structurally wrong with the knee, so it looks like when the Browns come back out of the bye week, he'll be able to play. But Jimmy, you're exactly right. When he's only in there half of the plays, half of the snaps, and he's not healthy, that makes a huge difference. And I know Olivier Vernon actually had a really good game yesterday, but to not have a healthy Myles Garrett on a defense that's already struggling makes your life twice as difficult.
Yeah, and remember, Vernon had a good game, but he had the good game early when Garrett was in the game. And, because Garrett really occupies so much attention from the other team's offense. And it's just a numbers game. If three people are trying to take Garrett out of the play, that should leave you a lot of opportunities to at least have a one-on-one, and hopefully you're going to win the one-on-one. The other thing, Dino, that happened to them was yesterday that they give up a lot of yardage and they give up a lot of points defensively. Their blueprint to winning is they outscore you. They score a lot of points. In their 3 losses this year, they haven't scored hardly at all. I mean, I think they had 6 points in Baltimore, 7 in Pittsburgh, and they had 6 yesterday, and those were 2 field goals rather than a touchdown. They went without a touchdown in the game. But in some of the games that they win, though they've given up a lot of yardage and a lot of big plays defensively and a lot of points, they get turnovers to offset that. Now, they had an opportunity for 3 to 4 turnovers yesterday, and they were unable to get them. Ronnie Harris in the game that might have been a pick six. He could have gone all the way with it. There was a pass by Sheldon Richardson, and B.J. Goodson almost had it, but he didn't get it. I thought Garrett was going to get a strip sack on a ball that he had his hands on, and yet Derek Carr, to his credit, was able to hold on to it and get it away from him. And then the final play was they had a fumble right down by the 2-yard line when Carr scrambled and got hit, and Denzel Ward knocked the ball out, and they didn't get that. Now, when they have won and still given up a lot of points and a lot of yardage defensively, they've gotten those turnovers, and they didn't get them yesterday.
And then the flip side, offensively, every little miscue really came back to haunt them. Harrison Bryant's fumble, turned out to be huge. That was the Browns were looking like they were headed to score. Jarvis Landry not getting that touchdown catch after it was reviewed came back to hurt the Browns. It seems like every time they had a false start penalty, it came back to hurt them. And, when you're not scoring, as you say, and you're not really getting the football, every little misfire comes back to haunt you twofold.
Yeah, and Njoku had a big drop. He had a huge drop that would have gotten them a first down and kept a drive going. And that just can't happen. Landry, I think, Dino, is hurt. Well, we know he's hurt. He's got a bad rib. I just don't think that he would be as loose-handed as he has been. He had those 2 drops in the Colts game. That's the day he did get hurt. He wasn't really thrown to a great deal in the Cincinnati game, nor in the Pittsburgh game. And then yesterday, there were a couple of balls that typically he would put away. He still had a marvelous catch, one-handed grab that kept the drive going. But that's just Landry really is affected, I think, by that broken rib. So he's one of those guys, and it's a pretty lengthy list, that will do well by getting some rest and recoup time during the bye week.
Yeah. So as we look at the Browns from a kind of a wider focus now, we're in the bye week. We actually also are in the midway point of the year now at 5-3. I look at it, Jimmy, the last 3 games, they got blown out by the Steelers. They had to rally late to beat the Bengals. and then they really got handled, so to speak, by the Raiders. Were it not for that comeback by Baker Mayfield, we're talking about a Browns team that's 4-4 with 3 straight losses. I'm glad they won that game, but I think it requires, when you talk about the Browns being 5-3, you really do have to look a little bit closer into these games, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And I think that, again, we were all very happy about what happened in Cincinnati, and we were all making playoff plans. And that is easier said than done now. That's how critical I think that loss was yesterday. And let me explain that. And that is that you're probably going to have to be up against a team like the Raiders to get a playoff spot, and the Colts. And the Browns did a good job. They beat the Colts. So the first tiebreaker becomes head-to-head competition, and the Browns would have that against Indianapolis. But they won't have that against the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders would get the nod over the Browns in a tiebreaker situation because the Raiders beat the Browns head-to-head. That's why that game became so critical yesterday, and it's just really tough to take the way that played out yesterday, because as poorly as they were playing, remember, you go into the fourth quarter, it's 6-6. Now, I know that at the start of the fourth quarter, the Raiders are going to go in and take the lead in the game and score a touchdown. But it still is on the scoreboard 6-6 going to the fourth quarter, and you're at home, okay? So it was a critical loss yesterday. So I know that we're talking about the playoffs, but right now there's a lot of work that still is left to be done with the football team to get them over the hump. But they might be just a team that is going to take care of business against teams they're supposed to take care of business against. And that would be Houston coming up when they come back off the break. I think the Philly game will be very tough. I think both New York games are very, very winnable. And, those are the games that there's really no room for many more missteps. That's how important that game was yesterday.
Because you look at it, you're going to have to deal with the Steelers, the Ravens, and the Titans. Those are all going to be difficult games. Probably they will not be favored in any of those games. So all of a sudden now you're looking the way you just laid it out. It's like if you really want to get yourself into a position where you think you're going to be a playoff team, you really want to be 10-6. I mean, you'd love to be 11-5, but at least 10-6, and then you're hoping against hope that you don't have a repeat of 2007. 9-7 is a lot tougher to get in. I don't care if you have an extra playoff spot or not.
Yeah, I think you're in. I think you would get in at 10. But that means you're going to have to go 5-3 again. And there are 3 games that you bring up that are going to be very, very difficult, even though the 2 against your division rivals will be in Cleveland. Again, those are really great teams, and they're probably still going to be playing for a lot when they play you. Certainly the Ravens will be in the beginning of December. I mean, and who knows what Pittsburgh will be dealing with at the end of the year. The way they're playing, they could be dealing with the type of atmosphere that New England was in that year, trying to go undefeated. I mean, that's how great the Steelers are playing. And Nashville and the Tennessee Titans are going to be tough down in Nashville. That leaves you the 3 losses. That means you got to win those other games to get to the magic number of 10. And do I think it's doable? Yes, I do think it's doable, but it's going to take a lot of work, because even the wins against some of these other teams like Cincinnati, both of those wins, those really embodied a great deal of work for the Browns to get past a team like the Bengals. I think, I don't think the Jets, when you go into that game, I don't know that they're going to want to win that game, considering what they want to do in the state that they're in. But a team like the Giants definitely would, with a new head coach in Joe Judge. And it's just going to be tough. Philadelphia plays everybody tough. And I would think that the Texans might feel a little bit rejuvenated as they've gone through the chaos of Bill O'Brien and everything like that. So there's a lot of work to be done. Whereas last week we were sitting here saying, gosh, we're going to be in the playoffs. Maybe we'll even be at home during the playoffs. Right.
Lastly, Jimmy, just kind of putting a bow on this first half of the season, what has stood out to you as your favorite moment through these first 8 games, as the, calling all the action of these Browns games, whether, home and home, because you've been at the stadium the whole time. What stood out to you the most?
Well, the fact that they came out and they've won 5 games, I think that's been a lot of fun. And some of the games have been really, truly spine tingling. I mean, the Dallas game was that way. And I know the Cowboys aren't the Cowboys of old, but it's still Dallas. You won down in Dallas. You're beating the Cowboys and the way they did it and how OBJ performed that day with 3 touchdowns in the game. I think that also when you take a look at a game like the Indianapolis game, and that's the game I think that you take a look at, and that's the way they're going to have to play in the second half of the season. That's going to be a tough game. It was a tough game. You had Nick Chubb in that game. You had the 1-2 punch of Chubb and Hunt in that game. They were more the Browns of the 5 wins than the Browns we saw yesterday of the 3 losses, I think. So those are some of the really good moments. And, of course, both games against Cincinnati and seeing that rivalry come back, and the way it's come back with two young quarterbacks. Baker's still a very young quarterback. Burrow is a baby. He's a rookie, and he is getting so good so fast. And, Dino, by the end of the year, they probably are going to have some surprising wins, the Bengals, because they just keep getting better and better. Had a great win yesterday over the Titans, and believe me, they gave the Browns everything they could handle in the 2 wins, and we're fortunate to come out of that series at 2-0. So I give the Browns a lot of credit. I think it's a bad day yesterday, really bad day, disappointing day for the Browns against the Raiders. But again, just like I said, you have to pull yourself back a little bit and say, 8 games in, would you have signed up for 5-3? And I would have, and I think, and I hope a lot of Browns fans would have done that too, because that's very surprising and very, very, showing that there's a bright, bright light shining on the Browns right now, that they can continue to get better and better and hopefully cash in on a lot of good work here in the front part of the season and make it pay off in the second part of the season.
No question about it. Jimmy, great stuff as always, my friend. We'll look forward to seeing you starting at 5 on What's New and throughout the rest of the evening tonight on 3 News. And it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks a lot, Dino.
All right, we thank you all for watching. Donovan and Dino, have a good night, everyone.